Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel Pause Animation and in our new segment Pause on Manga.
This is where we cover some of our favorite manga series and recommend them to you all, showing how much we love them. This time we're covering the manga Full Metal Alchemist.
Yes, and we've talked about this franchise so many times on this channel, so it's time we cover where it all began with the original manga.
Yes, and before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification with these some future podcasts and Wanna Pause videos.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for joining us. So, Full Metal Alchemist, one of the greatest mangas and animes of all time.
Yes.
It should be a first view for everyone.
Yes. And we actually had watched the anime first.
Mm-hmm.
We had watched part of 2003, not knowing that it only covered part of the story and then became original later. And then we watched Brotherhood, which was the more faithful adaptation. And a few years later, we decided, we've seen now both series. Why don't we read the manga to actually have the full story how it was meant to be? And we end up getting the omnibus style volumes where it has 3 in 1. And that's how we end up reading the whole series in a month.
Yes, and it was fantastic. So very quickly we'll tell you this is written and illustrated by Hiromu Arakawa.
Mm-hmm.
It's the genre of adventure, dark fantasy, and steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
It ran originally from July 12th of 2001, I'll say 21.
What?
2001 to June 11th, 2010, and it has 27 volumes. So yeah, we had 9 omnibuses.
Yes.
And it appeared first in Monthly Shonen Gangan.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, when the first series was made, it was based in part on the manga. But the manga wasn't finished.
Right.
So that particular series made up its own ending.
Right.
And then the 2010 was almost a one-to-one
Right.
for the manga itself.
Right. And for some people, it became a sort of thing of which is better, the 2003 one or the Brotherhood? Well, both animes have huge fan bases, and you're not allowed to disrespect either version. We prefer Brotherhood, but we see a lot of good in 2003. And for some who've seen both, you can watch the canon stuff of 2003, and then the canon stuff of Brotherhood, and then you watch the whole manga. But as we prefer Brotherhood, there's still lots of great things the other version provided. And the manga actually has some things that neither version had. Like some scenes were left out because they had been covered already or they were too long. And we got some extra side stories. We were able to see like an epilogue that was not featured in Brotherhood at all. Extra silly stories they had that were just parodies of the anime. It ended up being a really fun read, and we got to see a lot of what the author wanted to have in each chapter and how the progress was and how the anime was airing alongside with the manga as it was being published as a manga volume.
Absolutely. So quickly, for those of you who may not be familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, it again takes place in the steampunk world. This primarily styled after the European Industrial Revolution. Is set in the 20th century or the early 20th century, and it's in a fictional universe where alchemy is widely practiced, and it follows the journey of 2 alchemist brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric. We love them both. Who are searching for the Philosopher's Stone to restore their bodies after they failed to bring back their mom from the dead. And you have to read the manga or see the series to see how all this plays out.
Right. They're like the original Sam and Dean.
Yes. And the manga itself is really great. It's like seeing the anime on page form. It's exciting. It's engaging. The artwork looks exactly the same. And Arakawa is brilliant. And I remember you telling me at one time, Rascal, that originally she wanted people to think she was a guy.
Right.
So that her manga would sell.
Right. And then years later, when it got at the end of the manga, she did reveal she was a woman writing it. And there was no change in her popularity or the manga's popularity. For some of the women in Japan, they feel that in order to get more attention for the story, and they're writing something outside of shoujo, they use male pen names in order to gain more of an audience. And then some kind of keep it like that and keep the pen name and they stay referred to as male, or they'll come on and say they're actually female. And for a lot of people, it really doesn't matter on the gender of the author, just as long as they write a great story. Now, I've come up with some people saying, oh, well, these women wrote these great manga and this, that, and the other. It's like, but that doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean it's not a good story.
Right.
It just shows that there are lots of women out there with great talent. That's what Disney is trying to copy with Tokyo Pop and having none of the female manga writers, only none of them are successful right now.
So, unfortunately, maybe they should read some of these top manga that are happening now written by female mangaka, and the majority of them, believe it or not, that are in the top 10 have been written by females.
Right.
And get a feel for what it is that the audience wants and then deliver it.
Right.
But quickly want to let you know that this manga has sold over 80 million volumes worldwide, making one of the best-selling manga series ever. And when you read it, you can understand why. The pacing, again, if you've seen the anime, then you've read the manga. It's the same type of pacing, and the storytelling is interesting and exciting, and you get fully developed characters. Even side characters are developed, and you come to like them and know them, or hate them if they're characters that you're supposed to hate.
Right.
And you don't feel like, okay, I'm reading this manga, I like the anime better, or I'm watching the anime, I like the manga better. When you read the manga, you absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And I personally have to say I love them both. I can't say I love one more than the other. Of course, anime's moving.
Right.
But again, they're one-to-one, practically one-to-one.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I love them both equally.
Right.
And we own the series.
Yes.
And one day we plan on owning the manga in full as well.
Right. And out of the 3 adaptations, as we said, Brotherhood is our favorite. 2003 version would be our second, because we did like some things that weren't part of the manga that they actually did something interesting with. And our least favorite adaptation is the Netflix live-action trilogy, which just is offensive to even have on the service.
Which really doesn't seem to even be based on the book itself, which is really weird.
No, they just gotta go.
It's like they decide to take it a different route and make something different. And we know that's commonly done in Japan.
Right.
But we think for the live action they should have stuck with either FMA or FNAB and not taking it somewhere else, so that it stayed just as interesting and as engaging.
Right.
And in the movies, they were almost like totally different characters, which is very unfortunate, and to me not a wise decision, because these characters are really well loved. And whether you're someone who's a novice to manga and anime, or someone who's been watching it for decades, this has got to be in your list of the top 10 that you have read or you should read. And again, it's Kara's wonderful story writing. You'll see a lot of parallels to things that have happened in our actual reality, different wars and different things that have happened that are mixed in this fictional universe. But she does it, and she blends it, I should say, perfectly, where it seems like, okay, this really happened. This is a real place. And you can identify the things that you know have happened in our history. But she takes it and changes it just enough where it's just, I don't think it was offensive to anyone who lived through some of these instances.
Right.
Which was really prolific of her, thinking about what happened with MHA and Horikoshi, with some things that he included that some people were offended by, that were historical references. But somehow she managed to change it just enough where that didn't happen.
Right, and it's really testament to how well made it was, where you know the reference, but you know this is still fictional. It just feels real, but it's fictional. And they tackle so many themes in here of war and sacrifice, family, what was the purpose in a person's life. The one they used a lot was the one is all is one, which kind of leans towards the law of attraction belief. And it actually manages to have everything in here without trying to force you into believing one. Because there's also many characters that have various beliefs. Some believe in alchemy and science, in nothing, in God, in the sun, in science. There's so many, but you're not being forced to believe one person's belief is the true belief.
Right, you're just being given like an array and a picture of what exists during the time.
Right, and that's what I really like about Brotherhood. They kind of stuck to that. Well, 2003 sort of leaned towards nihilism, since they took out Truth, who was in the gate, and the one that took Al's body and Ed's arm and leg. He was kind of taken out of the 2003 version to say like there was nothing. Instead of there being an afterlife, there was just the real world, the parallel reality, and it was very odd. So it kind of took away that deep message behind that being existing, and leaving it in for Brotherhood really made more of an impact for the people who hadn't read the manga and seen it for the first time. On it gives you a lot to think about when you see the scene, especially when you get to the end of the story and what it implies when Ed makes his final decision.
Definitely. One of the best things about this manga is the relationship between Ed and Al.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it's been fostered since they were children.
Mm-hmm.
The mother is, of course, highly responsible for this, since the dad left when they were very young.
Mm-hmm.
And even after the events that happen, they take away the parents, they stick close.
Mm-hmm.
They stay together, and they get into trouble together. And unfortunately, them trying to bring back the mom using alchemy results in them being punished together by Truth.
Right.
But Ed does not abandon his brother while he is in this place waiting.
Mm-hmm.
He tells him, I'm coming back for you. I'm going to get your buddy back. I'm getting you back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Wait for me.
Right.
And that's one of the,
you wait.
right. You see it all the time on Twitter. That's one of the pictures. And he kept his word no matter what happened. He was on the forefront of his mind. Now, you have to mention that his body was with Truth, but his consciousness was not. And so when you see the armor that appears on the cover,
Mm-hmm.
or in pictures with Ed,
Mm-hmm.
who's in the red cloak,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what you would call it.
Yes, cloak. You're right.
Al's consciousness or spirit has been adhered to the armor.
Right.
With alchemy, nonetheless.
Right.
And so they go about throughout Amestris trying to find out how they can reclaim what they've lost.
Right.
And then again, so many, as you said, so many things happen. There are adventures, there's challenges, there's trouble, there's villains.
Lots of them, yeah.
And then they, if you haven't read this or seen this, there's spoilers coming. And then they end up learning further down the line that the dad is not dead. And
He did
they
not
have,
just.
they have
yeah.
to deal with the feelings that they have. Al's, you know, he's pretty easygoing. He forgives them. Ed, on the other hand,
Wants to kick him.
and this is a quote from the show, "You bastard!" Yeah, I mean, he keeps calling his dad that, and yes, it's one of the funniest parts of the
Oh my
anime.
gosh, yeah.
But he has to come to terms realizing the truth of what had happened with his dad, and it wasn't the way that he imagined. It wasn't the way they thought it had occurred.
Yeah.
And so all these things happen through the book, and by the end of the book, they have to move on to the future
Mm-hmm.
after all these things come to a conclusion.
Right.
Also forgot to mention that you have the military,
Right.
who are the ones who employ the alchemists.
Right.
And Ed is the youngest person to ever become an alchemist.
Right.
Which makes him the butt of jokes
Right.
and teasing by
Right.
the older people.
Right,
Like,
it's
this
like-
kid.
Right, and his height, his age, and everything, and then it's like, oh, you're asking for trouble. And then when they see him actually do something, like, they are too afraid to say anything else. And one thing we definitely need to mention, it's a smaller part of the manga, but still important in terms of character growth and emotion.
Ed and Al live in Rizumbo at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
But Amestris is the name of the country.
Right, that's right. One thing that applies to the emotional growth for Ed is the shift between him and Winry, which is probably one of the best parts of reading the manga.
One of the best ships in anime.
Right, and it's not, again, it's nothing is forced on you. This isn't really so ham-fisted. It's not over your head. It's not really sugary, sweet, and tropey where you just want to ignore that and just get to the story. It is part of the story. It's part of Ed's growth to be more open because you know how he is. He's like emotionally constipated sometimes, and you can see how he feels about her, how she feels about him, and they have lots of moments together throughout where they both grow individually and together. And two of my favorite scenes in here, one would be you learn Ed and Al actually were fighting over her when they were really, really little since they all grew up together. They were like a family.
Right.
And it said, oh, you remember when we both had a fight over her? He said, yeah. He said, yeah, I beat you. I won. And she still rejected me. And you said, yeah, it's because she didn't want you. I was like, why are you saying that? That's rude.
She wanted the bad boy.
I can see it now. It's just like, I actually went over to him still. And then the second would be one of the most intense scenes when we found out who killed her parents with the scar. And there comes a really intense scene where you think she's going to shoot him. And if that happened, you knew it would change really everything. And she has a scene with Ed where he tells her that her hands were made for giving life, not taking life. And it's a really powerful moment. It sticks with a lot of people because you knew if something had gone different, the character would have been different, the story would have been different, everything would have been like completely changed. Which is why it was really kind of upsetting for people when they took out the scene in live action and it cut off after a certain point and cut off all the emotion. And then on top of it with the actress, nothing was really wrong with the actress. She did her best. But what was kind of stand out about it is that they had Caitlin Glass return to voice Winry in live action. And you could tell the voice didn't match the actions enough. But the voice actress was outperforming the actress she was voicing over.
Absolutely.
It was like
and
nothing
she
was
had
changed.
Voiced the role in how many
Over
years?
a decade.
And she still slayed.
It was like, how is she outperforming the one she's voicing over?
Fantastic. Yes. The anime is great, but I want to go back to the manga one more time because this is where we meet all of these wonderful characters.
Right.
Both villains and heroes. And you have some of the best characters ever in manga that come out of this series. You've got, as we mentioned, Ed and Al.
Yes.
You've got Winry. You have Azumi Curtis.
Yes.
And her husband, I think
Right.
Carl, I think
Yes.
that's his name. You have the military where you have Roy Mustang and Riza Hawkeye.
Yes. And Major Armstrong of the Armstrong family.
And Jean Havoc. And you have lots of characters that are some of the worst characters you've ever seen.
Oh, like the homunculi.
Now, we mentioned Scar and the homunculi, but the worst one is Shao Tucker, one of the worst
gosh.
characters ever to appear
Oh, gosh.
in a manga series or an anime series. And with that, you also get a set of memorable characters, the daughter Nina and the dog,
Yes.
because of what transpires in it. The homunculi, yes, they are absolutely memorable. And you've had so many other mangas who have been inspired by those particular characters.
Yes.
And you have the homunculus you love to hate, Wrath,
Right.
in the Full Metal Alchemist manga, is the same in the Brotherhood series, but not the same in the 2003
Right.
series.
They kind of swapped him with someone else.
And the voice actor they got was perfect because he has this fatherly tone and like you can just trust him, and he's this wonderful man, but he's a homunculus, Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes off as this wonderful person that you can trust, helping Roy, helping Ed, la-di-da, and he comes up to being one of the biggest villains.
Right.
And again, this is a testament to Arakawa's writing, how wonderful it is. You have these locations that take place within the manga that the drawing, you see them, but somehow she makes them come to life with the writing and the people. They're vivid, and you feel they're vivid even before you watch the anime.
Yes.
Which is absolutely brilliant. And you rarely feel that way when you're reading any type of book, whether it's a manga, a comic, whatever, where it comes to life within the pages before you even see it made into an anime or an animated series.
Right.
She managed to do that. You get the full feeling of truth. The doors and truth.
Right.
And what's behind it and the seriousness of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But within the seriousness of what's going on, you have all this comedy. You have this love between different characters that's being represented on different levels. You have people that come into their lives for a season, people that are leaves, people that are branches, people that are roots.
Right.
It's just an absolutely wonderful manga that should be read by every manga lover.
Right.
And we also know that Arakawa did another series called Silver Spoons that we absolutely love. That's more of a comedy.
Right.
Taking place and telling you about the dairy industry. And this is just as entertaining, but it's more fun.
Oh, yeah.
It takes place in modern day.
And you know where Ed's hatred of milk comes from.
Yes.
It's like, does she have an issue with dairy?
But if you have not read Full Metal Alchemist, you should put it at the top of your reading list. With that being said, if you've read Full Metal Alchemist manga, let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you love it as much as we do? Was it one of your first mangas you read like it was for us? Or were you well into manga for years and decided to read this later? It's one of our first great impressions of what an awesome manga should be.
Yes.
What was it for you? And if you haven't read it, it's available at your public library. It's available to buy on Amazon. It's available at Half Price Books, Overpricedly. It's available everywhere.
Yes.
And get out there and get this manga and read it. You won't be disappointed. Even if you've seen the anime and never read the manga, you're doing yourself an injustice not reading this manga. It's just a wonderful experience. It's unlike anything else that's out there.
Yes.
And it's definitely one of the markers and standards by which other mangaka view their own works.
Right.
And she's really a pillar, you could say, in the mangaka community. She stands out.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to have a career like hers?
Right.
And have the fame like she has? She's always mentioned in every top 10 list.
Right.
The manga is always mentioned on every best list.
Yes.
The anime is mentioned on lists that maybe are 100 or 50 or 25. Because it's older now, some people leave it out. But if you've got one where there's a lot like the top 100, which we plan on doing one day, this anime, both 2003 and 2010, will appear on it.
Right. And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates when you can do your favorite anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your spending time with us, and we get to share our joy with you of all things manga that we love. If you have any suggestions for us of mangas you want to read, let us know in the comments below. We already got one from Sylvia, Promise Neverland, and we did do it.
Yes.
And thank you so much. Give us more. We can't wait.
Yes. So, thanks so much for watching Muscle Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.